Some might argue that the content of our music serves as poison to the mind of our generation. If by some stroke of the pen hip-hop was silenced, the issues would still be present in our community. Drugs, violence, sexism, and the criminal element were here long before hip-hop. Traditionally, multi-billion-dollar industries have thrived on the premise of violence, sexuality, and derogatory content. This capitalistic trend was not created nor introduced by hip-hop. It has been here. It is the American way. I can admit that there are some problems in hip-hop, but it is only a reflection of what's taking place in our society. Hip-hop is sick because America is sick.
My whole goals for being here is to preserve hip-hop. And I know this is a culture that involved, and I watched the first panel, we talked about society. It's definitely a part of a problem from society, but we are inflaming this problem by not being responsible. And I want to take that responsibility. This is a business. When I watch everybody get up here and talk about this, this is a financial business. Hip-hop is a $4 billion business. This is a way of life. This is the way we take our kids out of the ghetto. And for me, I could honestly say I was only in it for the money. I had nobody to pat me on the back to say, Pete, you could do something else with your life. Think about the music. Think about the content. Kids are listening. And let's think about the consciousness that we're putting into our music.
It's a powerful and necessary issue to speak about the way in which black women in particular have been degraded and demonized in art forms that claim to speak for the broader spectrum of African American thought, culture, or position. But what's equally interesting is the fact that these are deep roots in American culture when it comes to demonizing women. It didn't start with Snoop Dogg. It didn't start with anybody who's been associated with hip-hop culture. That's white supremacist ideology predicated upon capitalist expansion of opportunity. Talking about commerce, we're in the right place. America is built upon the degrading images perpetuated against black women and men, brought here as slaves, used for free labor to build a country that they are presently denied. So if we're going to deal with misogyny and sexism and patriarchy and homophobia, we've got to dig deeper into the archives of American culture, and we've got to look at the practices, the behaviors, and the beliefs that are perpetuated in Congress, that are perpetuated in business affairs, that are perpetuated in entrepreneurial circles, and in religious institutions. I think that hip-hop culture at its best is a necessary expression of degraded, demoralized young people who find the cultural expression of their identities in a culture that is fundamentally hostile to them as something they have to do. And I think what we should be about doing is interrogating and being more introspective about the practices that are negative in our own communities, then join with hip-hop to clean up across the board the negativity that we find there.
I know that there is a problem, a deep-seated, deeply rooted problem that exists in our community. And a paycheck is not the paycheck is not an excuse for being a part of that problem. We can agree, I agree, about the rage. I got rage. I'm a member of Congress. I still have deep-seated rage, okay? But how is that rage channeled? Look, man, brothers, let me say this. You can't justify to me the use of the word nigger because my slave master used it. There is no justification at all. My slave master raped my mama and my ancestors. I am not going to buy into that, all right? As a matter of fact, I can't condone that at all, right? I have to deny that approach. I don't want to adopt the mores, the metaphors, the machinations, and the mentality of my slave master. I want to move myself and my community from those kind of anchors. I don't want to ape and imitate my slave master. I want to create something more life-giving, something that affirms my dignity as opposed to affirming my death.
Let me say one thing about the N-word here. I know Mr. Banner spoke about that. I think that we have to be complex about the N-word. It's not simply whether or not, and you made a brilliant and eloquent testimony that you didn't want to simply reproduce the pathology that was transmitted to you by a white supremacist overlord, and I think that's absolutely right. But words are complex and meanings are flexible. The use of the N-word didn't begin with hip-hop. I heard ministers and preachers talk about it, bishops talk about it. I heard respected members of the community talk about it. There's a communication gap and a generational gap.
If Congress wants to change hip-hop, they can start with Congress Heights. That's right down the block. If you want to see why we rap the way that we rap, go to Congress Heights. You don't even have to come to Mississippi. I asked you to come to Mississippi and spend 2 days. It's because it's funny. You guys make these different speeches, but when you go home to a nice house and some pretty nice kids who will probably get a job because of your influence. It's not the case where we're from.
I want to describe to you for a second how I'm feeling about this riveting debate. I'm feeling like, how can I ask something that doesn't make me look like just categorized as a privileged white woman who doesn't really get it and who can't recite any of the rap music. And I think that the way I feel in part describes the problem that we have in all sitting down together and talking about both the larger problem or issue and the specific issue of rap music, is that in some ways we come from very different perspectives, and it's hard really to get into each other's head.
But what's interesting is that, which is what I meant by we don't quarantine the crazy to hip-hop, there are ways in which polite society reinforces negative values toward women, but they don't call them bitch, hoe, skeezer, slut, chickenhead, hood rat. I'm not suggesting that bitch, hoe, skeezer, hood rat, and chickenhead are not offensive. They're profoundly offensive. What's interesting is that, but if we take moral comfort in, we've now isolated the strain of virulent misogyny in hip-hop, and therefore we've gotten at the root of it. No, we've gotten a powerful manifestation of it that needs to be dealt with. But what we've done at the same time is avoid the way in which sentiments expressed against women are pervasive in the society. Here's what we have to come to grips with. To be positive is not itself a virtue if it's not accompanied by serious, powerful art that forces us to reflect upon our society. All art should not make you feel good. Some art should get in your face. Some art should be irreverent. The point and purpose of art is not simply to make you feel warm and fuzzy. Some art ought to make you change your bigoted ways. Maybe you're a sexist. Some art can make you think about it. Maybe you're a racist. Some art can make you think about it. Some art then perpetuates the very legacy that it claims to want to resist. Should we be critical of it? Absolutely right.
I guess the question I would ask you is, how can you work to have a positive message? What can you do in your music to get out the positive message, to accent that? What can you do?
I am like Stephen King. I do better at horror music. Horror music is what I do.
Can you?
You don't ask Will Smith to do the same. Well, while you're acting Will Smith, can you please make sure that you put some kind of message in your movie while you're acting and you're being a killer?
Okay.
We're musicians.
Look, we here in Washington have work to do. I come to work every single day trying to do better for the people that you're sending your message to. My question to you is, are you willing to try to do better in communicating a message that is more positive?
What I will say, I am willing to work harder to change the conditions in which I come out of, so maybe I won't have to talk about it. First of all, we were brung here as slaves. We were thrown in situations, and now we're talking about the stuff that we see. And it's like, it's a big problem. Everything there's nothing that you can look at in my music and say that it doesn't exist in my community.
And I think that what we have to do is to push for self-criticism. Misogyny, sexism, homophobia, racism, and the like need to be dealt with, articulated, and wrestled with regardless of what color they come in, regardless of what body they come in. But at the same time, as Mr. Banner is suggesting, we must not somehow quarantine the problem to young black people who, when they manifest the pathology, are seen as its origins. They are certainly, at the worst, seen as its continuation.